Welcome to a special show on my Facebook page here tonight. And we have a gentleman coming on here. Some of y'all have already probably seen him in the past. We've talked with him. His name is Ed Rensi. You've heard me talk about him quite a bit and hype him up this week. Ed comes from a unique background, in my opinion. Great guy, Fox News contributor, was the CEO for many years for McDonald's North America, is now the chairman of the board at that brand. And when we talked here a couple of weeks ago, Ed, you said you wanted to start doing some mentorship to help people out that listen in on the show, things like start giving back. Well, we saw some stuff happen in the last week, and it got me up off the couch. I don't like to delve off too much into political or geopolitical things and things like that, but this thing that we see going on in Ukraine has brought something that right up your alley, in my opinion. You want to talk about teaching people to be leaders and what it takes to be a leader. And right now, this is my honest opinion. We are seeing a contrast in what it means to be a leader and what not being a leader. Now, the person I am going to give the most praise to, and I don't know anything about this guy other than what I've seen in the last 7 days, is we've got the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. Don't know his first name. This is how limited I've been on this, but I've watched the guy. This is a guy that is a comedian by trade. He's been elected to the president of Ukraine. He's being invaded by what people would consider a superior force. He contacted our president, said, "Hey, I need help." Our president says, "Well, I'll give you an airplane to fly you out." He says, "I don't want your airplane. I need ammunition." This man is on the front line drinking coffee with his troops, rallying a country. You've seen kids that are 8 years old to 80 years old standing in the streets of Ukraine, taunting Russian soldiers, making human blockades to stop the tanks. He's out there fighting with all these people. If there was ever a person who I consider has leadership skills, it's this guy. This dude's a comedian, for Christ's sake. He's not anything that you expect to do all this stuff. I'm 51 years old, and we talked before we come on air. I told you the presidents that I remember, going back to Jimmy Carter. Right now, everybody in America needs to stand up and look at what this guy's doing on the news and say, "Hey, we salute you." Whether you believe in his politics, whether you believe in anything else in the world, look at what this man's done to rally the troops of Ukraine in the leadership. I want to know, after you've led multiple major corporations, I don't know how many employees are at McDonald's. I know it's a lot. What do you see, and how do you compare that into leadership and things like that?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question because no matter what industry you're in, whether you're a war fighter or running a business or leading a church or a neighborhood community or leading your family, there's a huge difference between leadership and management. Leadership and leaders create a vision and say, "This is who we are, this is what we are, these are our beliefs, values, and behaviors, and we're going to go forward with these goals and objectives in mind." Managers create systems, processes, and procedures to be followed so that people that are being led can make decisions on their own about what the end state is. Politicians, and that's where we're at today. Joe Biden's never had a job in his life. He's never been a leader. He's only ever been a manager. He thinks most U.S. citizens aren't smart enough to run their own lives. So he's never, think about this, he's never ever had a job in his life. He talks about being a truck driver. He was never a truck driver. He makes this shit up all the time. It's his fantasy thought, but that's not who he is. So when you think about what's going on right now, this comedian in the Ukraine has been among the people forever. He knows them. He knows their beliefs. He knows their values. He knows what they want out of life. He's one of them. And he knows as their leader, creating a vision, if they don't stand up for their country, if they don't stand up for their way of life, they're going to lose it all. Biden wants to manage people and say, now calm down. You need to, the Russians are superior. Maybe they got something we can negotiate. And that's BS. That ain't going to happen because Putin is the devil incarnate. He's been a thug all his life. He'll be a thug till he dies. And he doesn't give a damn about you, me, or anybody else. He only concerns himself with power. He doesn't even want money. He's got more money than anybody else on the planet. It's not about money for him. It's about power, about dominating and being a manager. And Biden's incapable of dealing with that because he never had to deal with it. And so forget about the politics, forget about government. Think about everybody in your own life. Fathers and mothers have to be visionaries and leaders within their families. They can't be managers for any part of their life except raising their children well. And if they don't give their kids a vision of what the future could look like, give their kids a vision of what they should be, create beliefs. What do you believe in? What are your values? What's your vision for the future? So the difference between leadership and management is very significant. I'll give you an example of this. You take the greatest race car drivers in the world. They create a vision for their teams. They're the inspirational leaders. They're calm, they're cool, they're collected. And once they get in that car, they have complete trust in those mechanics and technicians that they can go to the max on the floorboard with that pedal and know that they can win because they got a team behind them. They don't manage those guys. They lead those guys by example. You look at, I'll tell you a story. Kenny Schrader drove my ARCA car one time in Springfield, Illinois. He went out and did 40 laps in this Chevy of mine. You need anything, Kenny? What do you want? He never said a word, comes in. He said, give me a wrench. I want to change the right front spring rate. I want to jack it up a little bit. He makes a couple turns. I don't know what he did. Got back in that car, made another 40 laps, came in and said, don't touch it. It's ready to go. And he had everybody on that team convinced we could win. And guess what? He created a vision and he won. My first win in a series like that. Leaders lead. Managers get in the way. And you talk about politics, you talk about religion, you talk about Billy Graham, one of the greatest religion icons in the world. He led people. He created a vision that you could have a quality life. So my attitude about these things are, there are born leaders. There are leaders that learn the craft and the trade. Now, I'm going to say this about you, Roy. I'm not even going to talk about who you are or what you are. I'm going to tell you this. You are a natural born leader. You're trying to inspire other people to be better than what they think they might be. I got a friend of mine, new friends actually. They had a child that died from diabetes in a very, very, very early part of their life. Had a big impact on the family. They have a daughter, Lacey, who's driving legend cars. This kid can wheel a car. She's gonna go someplace. Her parents are providing leadership. They're not telling her what to do. They're not telling her how to do it. Sometimes they talk too much for her. She knows what to do. And she's driving vehicles, race cars, that aren't perfect by any stretch because they don't have the money, they don't have the skills. But she manages what she's got beautifully because she's got a vision. So in any walk of life, I don't care if you're a NASCAR, I don't care if you're a truck driver, I don't care who you are, you can provide leadership if you can create a vision and have a clear statement of who you are and create a systems of beliefs, values, and behaviors. Joe Biden has not done any of that for this country. He got elected by default because Trump couldn't keep his mouth shut. And look at who our vice president is. Would you trust her to have her button on a nuclear weapon? I don't want to talk about this anymore. What's next?
So we had a lot of comments on here, and you're talking about Lacey. It says, "Hello, Ed, Heather, and Lacey here. Looking forward to hearing from you tonight." There you go. See you. Well, the first, and Jerry Stewart, thank you for listening in. Then we have Donna Tupper. Glad to hear this presentation tonight. Thanks. Donna is involved in a telemedical program that's going out. I've had a talk with her. They're trying to inspire some telemedicine for truck drivers.
That's a huge deal. Telemedicine is the future of medicine. I've been working with a couple people, Joe Mattioli, whose family used to own the Speedway in Pocono, and his wife, Terry Weber. And we've been talking about getting Sprinter vans and getting physician's assistants and medics out of the military and have them become a franchise and run these vans to senior citizens' homes to do basic blood pressure and sugar tests and, diabetic tests and stuff like that, and then get a doctor online. So our senior citizens and people that are homebound because they're in wheelchairs or whatever can get a good quality experience with medicine. Telemedicine is the future of medicine in the United States.
I have a telemedical appointment with a place out of Texas on Friday with some VA healthcare stuff. As a matter of fact, it's my first time with doing that.
A proctologist or what, Roy?
No, I'm going to go in there so they can tell me I'm batshit crazy. So we'll just leave it at that.
You know that.
Well, I know. I don't need that. I don't need anybody to tell me that. And have a lifelong friend. Kim Price says,
part of your character.
Yeah, is that Kim Price, and I don't know why she said this, says, Roy, I feel like defriending you right now. I don't know what I've done to upset you already. One of my racing friends, Tim Fettinger, says, talking about Joe Biden, says, well, he took on Corn Pop, so we got to remember he took on Corn Pop. So, and then Heather says, thank you, Ed. And then Donna Tupper says, thank you for the testimony, Ed. So there you go.
Well, hey,
people,
listen,
I gotta
wait. I gotta say, Donna, if you need some help with telemed, if there's anything I can do to help franchise that idea, because I'm going to do it one way or the other, and I'm happy to have people that are interested in the same thing, and just I want everybody to be happy and grow. It's important.
Yeah, I got to go back a step forward because I've got to know Ed by accident. We don't need to go into how we got to know each other. But if you spend time talking to Ed when he's not talking in an environment like this, I don't care what you bring up. Ed's all involved in it some way. We brought up car washes the other day. He jumped into the testimony about building up a car wash franchise that's got 100 car washes up in the
500 right now. Tommy's Express Car Wash out of Holland, Michigan.
See, and he starts telling me this, and I've got to tell a backstory on this because we're talking about medicine and all this stuff, because Ed's that guy that's always got his brain going. And if I can get to that level, the world's going to end. I'm telling you. We're talking about moonshine. Ed tells him, you need to be in the hospitals. I'm sitting here thinking, a hospital, moonshine, what the hell is he talking about? It's like, that's not where this is going. And he brings up, well, they do functions. They do fundraising, things like this. It's like, wow, I never would have thought about all that stuff. It's just, if you spend time with Ed, you got to be on your toes because he's always thinking 3 steps ahead of you about whatever you talk about. That's the one thing I've learned about you. I don't think 2 steps ahead. You're thinking 5 to 10 steps ahead. So it's like, man, you got to catch up.
This is important because what you're talking about is leadership versus management. I'm not going to manage you. I want to lead you. Sip Shine has got a great idea.
Yep.
And I wish I could get more hands-on with that outfit. They're going to grow. They're going to grow gradually. They need to do a big step change with Ship Shine. And there's ways to do that. And it's all about capturing the imagination of people to understand the possibilities, not the impossible. Don't tell me I can't do something because I'm hell bent to do it anyway.
Yes. And Well, and you were talking about diabetes. Kim, I know Kim, we grew up as kids together, rode the bus together and all that. And my brother passed away from type 1 diabetes several years ago. So with the family that have diabetes, that's, man, I don't even know what to say about that. I'd lived with that my whole life.
Okay, juvenile diabetes in young kids, one of the biggest problems we have with diabetes in this country is the lack of knowledge of what the symptoms are. Do you have any idea
Right.
how many kids die of diabetes and their parents never knew they had it? You know, night sweats, and I don't even want to get into it, but I'll tell you what. And I don't know why this is, but sometimes the pancreas fails. I've got a cousin who was a brittle diabetic the day she was born. She'd been on insulin and diabetic drugs for 74 years. She was diagnosed. If she had been diagnosed, she had been dead by the time she was 3 years old. And
Well,
this is
my brother,
awareness, 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 awareness. You got to pay attention to this shit. It's very
well, and
important.
I grew up, I grew up supporting the diabetes. We did a bike-a-thon every year, juvenile diabetes. We went to summer camps with my brother to help them. And I'm going to tell you, one of the things that we had to do is if you went to the diabetic camp as a non-diabetic camp, and I think I was 7, 8, 9 years old, those kids all had to give themselves shots every day. And one of the things that we had to do was give ourselves a shot out there. I'm sorry, that's a lot of intestinal fortitude to do that every day. And
When you're a young kid.
yes, it's a hard thing to do.
Lacey and her parents have paid a hell of a price because their child wasn't diagnosed because there was no awareness. Now they're hell bent today to make sure nobody has that tragedy in their life again. Okay, let's move on to a new subject.
Well, and when you're talking about the Kuehls there, I guess that's how you pronounce their last name. I'm going to tell you, I'm another huge proponent of Lacey. I would love to have her on the show and talk racing one of these days because I am a huge, huge, huge person about we need more women in racing.
Okay, so I can tell you about her. She was inducted into the Florida Motorsports Hall of Fame with me. That's where we met.
Oh, that's awesome.
She's a kick-ass lady. I can't wait for her to find that right sponsor. Okay, let's go ahead. Enough commercials about that.
All right. So one of the things that I wanted to compare and contrast is just like we were talking about going back into the other chain is our president stood up and did a State of the Union address, I guess. I don't even want to call it that. So I don't know. He got up and spoke last night. So we'll leave it at that. He couldn't even get the name of the country right. I'm not wrong in this, and I'm sorry. I think, Ed, and you're what, 74 years old? I think you told me the other day.
77.
77. You're sharp and aware and can have a coherent sentence. You're right in the same age group as our president. And I'm sorry, but there is a vast difference in the way you talk and the way he talks. You remember what you're talking about. You may go off on a tangent, but you remember what you're talking about.
May go on a tangent. My job is to go off on tangents. That's what I do.
Yes. Heather Kuehl, State of the Union, terrible. Absolutely. I agree 100%. So our president stood up when right before all this started, said, hey, Putin, you go over there. We're drawing a line in the sand. We're going to do this. He did it anyway. Oh, hold on. You did it. So we're going to draw this line in the sand. Don't cross this line in the sand. He started off the speech last night and made himself look as weak as possible when talking about Russia. When he said, we just suspended all Russian flights, when every other NATO country suspended them immediately. So now I'm going to bring up something that him and I don't even want to say it's growing. Those certain people in that party called Trump a xenophobe for suspending certain flights. How does he justify doing that? You as a leader, how does he stand up and justify doing that?
He doesn't believe he has to justify anything. He's the king of the hill. Let me tell you what, Joe Biden I call him Basement Joe Biden because he hasn't been out of the basement in 55 years. He doesn't have any idea what goes on in America. He lives from Washington, D.C., Amtrak train to Delaware. You stop and think about it, he's never been past the Mississippi River. I mean, the guy has no awareness. He's been a career politician. If it wasn't for his old man's money back in the day, he got elected as a member of the House in one of the weakest districts in Delaware. Delaware is one of the most racist states on the face of the earth. Was then, not now. Let me tell you what. If I was president of the United States today, Putin would have never gone to where he's at. First of all, Afghanistan, I'd have gotten out of Afghanistan, but I'd never let the Taliban come in. I'd have never given up Bagram Air Force Base, which was the most important military institution, because that's where all of our heavy units could operate out of to whack those guys. The minute he got rid of that airfield and moved to the other airfield, left all that equipment behind, it was doomed to failure. And he just pulled everybody out without thinking about what's going to fill the vacuum. When the United States leaves, what's going to fill the vacuum? Do you not understand the terrorists would fill the vacuum? Now, you look at where we're at today. Putin and China were watching that like a hawk. They knew exactly what they knew. He's a weak leader. If that had been me, I'd have done it like Trump was doing it. And I got to tell you something about where we're at right now and the pickle we're in today. I'd have told Putin, first of all, I'd have never shut down the oil industry in the United States, oil and gas. We destroyed the oil industry. We shut down the pipelines. We stopped all the federal leases to explore for oil and gas. We got more cleaner fossil fuels than anybody on the face of the earth. We're buying $6 million worth of oil from Russia every day, right now.
Yep. Oh, we lost Ed. He'll come back in just a second. Oh, he knocked his device off, so we'll get him back on here in just a second. So we got Ed fired up tonight. So I got to tell you, that is one of the things. I usually don't delve off into all these subjects. So when he comes back in here, we'll get him back on here. I don't delve off into politics, but being a veteran and watching what's went on the last 7 days, I felt it very, very essential for me to get out and speak and talk about these things. As a veteran, watching our president get up there and say, "Oh, here we go, he's back."
I'm sorry, I smashed. I was hitting my desk.
Yeah, your green screen's got you covered up right now there for whatever reason. So
let me look here a second. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
That's all right. But I was just getting into it. I wanted to do this show tonight because I felt so, just like you did just now, after watching what went on in the last week in our country, watching our leader in being in the military. We always taught that the commander-in-chief, you always respect him, you do all this stuff, you stand by him. So I don't talk about that stuff very much. I don't like to delve off into it. But you've seen a president all but admit defeat. And I've never seen that in my lifetime. I've never seen a president just stand up and do what he's done in comparison to what we see a Ukrainian president doing. It to me, it floored me that we watched all of this going on. And that's why I said, when I talked to Ed earlier yesterday, when we set this all up, I said, man, you're going to see a different Roy out here tonight, because I'm kind of pissed off about what I'm seeing. So here we are tonight. So, well, Ed, you're still not on there yet, but we can hear you.
Hear me?
I can hear you.
I don't know how to turn this camera on. The hell with it. I'll just talk.
Yeah.
I can see you.
Yeah. But am I wrong in my opinion on that we watched the president just stand up on national TV and just basically admit defeat, offers a plane ride out of the president of Ukraine and said, hey, come on over here, we'll take care of you, but screw your people, we don't care what happens to them? Is that not what he just said? Yeah,
and I got to tell you something. Joe Biden has no idea what he's doing. He is so insulated from everybody and everything. He thinks he's doing a fabulous job. And did you see Chuck Schumer? He stood up and started to applaud and sat back down because they had signals. When Nancy Pelosi stood up, the Democrats were supposed to stand and applaud. He actually believes that they care about what he's saying. They don't care about him. And that's the difference between leadership and management. Those Democrats,
Yes.
AOC, Bernie Sanders, they're managing the hell out of Joe Biden for their own benefit and nobody else.
Well, and they talked about this. We had I don't know that she's a leader, but we had a person, a congressional person that was a Democrat, stood up afterwards last night and gave a rebuttal to the State of the Union. I think they said that's the first time that's ever happened. It's bad when your own party felt the necessity to stand up and tell you you're an idiot afterwards.
But think about who she is. She's a Muslim from the Middle East that came to the United States illegally in Minnesota. And if it
Yep.
hadn't been for all the Somalians that live in Minneapolis, she'd have never got elected.
Yep. So, and I mean, these is just what I'm saying though. It's amazing that we talk about inclusion and division and all this other stuff in the country when you got a who for practical purposes is the leader of the Democratic Party, and his own party turns against him. We talked about this before on one of our other shows, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but the Build Back Better America bill or whatever. It took a Democrat to stand up against him and tell him, you are not doing this. You're not correct. And stood up and made sure it didn't pass, even when we had Republican leadership cave into it.
Joe Manchin from West Virginia.
Yes, Joe Manchin.
You know, I grew up near West Virginia. I know Joe Manchin. He's a coal miner. And he knows what happened to the coal and oil industry in this country. And it hurt West Virginians horribly. And Joe's strong. Joe Manchin is a leader, not a manager. He looks out for his people.
Right. And you know, I'm giving my take. We've seen over the last, I'm just going to say 3 years because it is what it is. We've seen certain leadership in our Congress and in our House. Everyone seems to be fighting for the next either gotcha moment or the most ridiculous off the cuff thing. Whether it be a Democrat, whether it be a Republican, but it always seems to be about the same 15 or 20. They are fighting for that leadership role, whether they're Ted Cruz or whether they're AOC, which she's never going to be a leader. She's a bumbling fool. But anyway, Nancy Pelosi, they're all vying for that one spot, that one leader. But you want to talk about the real leaders, it's the guys you don't hear from all the time. Like you said, that Manchin. He stood up for what he believed in and said, no, this is not the right way. I'm going against my party, going against my people. I can't name of any right off the top of my head that fall into that category, but we've seen a few of those along the way that do that. Those are the people that we need to be rallying around, as the ones that you don't hear from, that are interested in doing, how do I want to say, the people's will, the ones that are there to actually advance what we're doing and all that stuff. So everybody, when you're going out to vote this year, pay attention to that going on. Don't look for that one that's waiting for the next person to say whatever. I'm sorry, a soundbite is a soundbite. It sounds good, but it don't mean nothing. I mean, you're talking about Chuck Schumer. That guy likes to I think he likes to hear himself better than anybody else. He'll stand up there and say whatever and he has nothing to say. So what are your thoughts on what we can do? I think we lost Ed again here. So Brent Ed lost his camera. I said, where did Ed go? He got a little upset earlier and lost his camera and his green screen. Congratulations. Talk about something else because there's nothing you or I can do about it. Ed is too totally stressed out. Uh, I think Ed is very passionate. I think that's the number one thing is Ed is very passionate. That's why we wanted to have this discussion tonight because Ed is a very passionate person. And I was very excited to have this discussion. I know Ed
Can you
was
hear me?
tonight. Yes.
Okay, I want to tell you a story about leadership.
Okay.
I did a lot of work for the United States Marine Corps Recruiting Command, and General Chris Cortez was running the command at that time. He invited me to go to San Diego to attend a conference of his senior leadership. And he wanted me to speak to them about the private sector. And Chris is now running South and Latin America for Microsoft. Brilliant man, smart as hell. So I go out there and I sat in a room with all of his leadership command. There must have been 150 people in that room, from privates that just graduated from boot camp to his senior colonels. And they presented the plan for the coming year for recruiting, the goals, objectives, who they wanted, why they wanted them, how they wanted them. And they went through 2-3 days of presentations. So the final day was for the command to talk to one another about the plan for the coming year. And so they started with the most junior guy in the room, the private. And then when everybody in that room had to comment on the plan, the first private stood up and he said, "Sir, no shit, sir, this is what I don't like." That's exactly what he said. Now, he was a boot. What the hell does he know?
Right.
So they went through the whole room, and the last guy that was talked to was a colonel that was about to become a light general. So I said to General Cortez, I said, "Why in the world did you start with a private?" He said, "My job is to lead. Had I started with the colonel, whatever he said, the rest of the guys would have agreed with. So always listen to the people, the junior people first, because they're going to tell you the truth, because they have to live with your decisions. And leaders need to understand you have to lead." And I'm telling you, I was blown away by that. Now, I'm going to tell you another little side story about the Marine Corps. The second day out there, we go outside and we were supposed to go freshen up, come back for dinner. And when we walked outside, there was a SEAL Team 6 group carrying a dinghy over top of their head running up the street. And the sergeant, or whatever I can't remember what his rank was, but he said, "General, sir, would you like to go for a run?" And Chris Cortez said, "Let me get my staff together. We'll change clothes. We'll meet you right here. Why don't you stand by or stand down," or whatever he said. So they go change their clothes and come back. They said, "Let's go for a run." Now, we reconvened at 7 o'clock in the morning. I show up about 6 o'clock. Here they come running. Those guys ran all night long. And Cortez was not going to let those SEALs outrun any Marine ever. I was blown away by that. And they walked into that room and continued the meeting like nothing ever happened. And that's what leadership is. You do what you got to do when you got to do it, the way you got to do it to succeed. There is no such thing as compromise. Joe Biden is owned by the Russians and the Chinese. Look at how much money his family's gotten through Hunter Biden and his brother, I think his name's Fred, over the years. They're multimillionaires. Joe Biden has never made that much money in his life in government. How do you get to be a millionaire, multimillionaire?
Yep. Well, we were having this discussion off air before we started tonight, and I'm going to put out a book. The name of a book. It's called Rogue Warrior, and it's by Richard Marcinko. If you don't know who Richard Marcinko is the founder of SEAL Team 6. And one of the things that we talked about earlier when we come off here, the last great thing that I saw, and I didn't know about all of this stuff in my lifetime, because I didn't follow politics at 6 or 7 years old. I didn't pay attention to the world views, whatever. But Jimmy Carter, I know he was considered one of the worst presidents in America, but he went to go get the hostages in Iran, for anybody that doesn't know that, and he had a failed mission to do that. The mission failed because of the sand getting into the turbine engines. If you worked on jet engines and sand, you know that does not mix, which I worked on jet engines in the Navy, so I understand all of this stuff. Dick Marcinko told them all that this was not going to happen for these reasons, and he was escorted out of the command central, or whatever you want to call it, for standing up and voting for that. But he talked about this in this story. You should all listen to how he came about into SEAL Team 6 and the things like this. That guy talks about books years ago about terrorism, about the things that are going on in the world right now. He predicted this 22 years ago, plus everything that was going on. It's amazing how much knowledge that we had in what we've let happen in the United States. If you ever get a chance, everybody listen to that book. Listen to it on Books on Tape, because it's Richard Marcinko that reads the book. Man, it's one of the greatest reads I've ever done. I guarantee you, y'all will have your eyes opened up about that. So we have a lot of comments, so let's get back to it. Let's go through the comments. We've had a lot more since then. Said Heather Kuehl says Biden has no backbone. He hasn't even been to the border. Heather Kuehl, he failed miserably, costing the lives of U.S. soldiers. Yes. Donna Tupper towards Ed. He's very passionate. Jerry Stewart, Ed exploded. That's when you lost the first time. It's disgusting what we're still getting oil from Russia, but it needs to be said and discussed. You're right, Ed. Where did Ed go? Then we got Tracy Webster. Congratulations. Talk about something else, because there's nothing you or I can do about it. Ed is totally stressed out. So, yes, there is something we can do about it. We can get together in a forum just like this, talk about it. We can share this out with everybody. You don't have to talk politics with people. There's one thing we can all do: register and vote. That's the bottom line. Register and vote. I know everybody says their votes don't matter. Well, if you don't vote, your vote certainly doesn't matter. So we're starting to see some people take a stand in the United States. One of the things that Ed and I had talked about previously too is we see the Freedom Convoy, or the Truckers Convoy, going to Washington, D.C. We hadn't touched on that, but I know we wanted to. Have you been following what's going on with that, Ed?
Yes, I have, absolutely. If the interstate highway system, the highways are the arteries of commerce for this country, the truck drivers are the red and white blood cells that carry the goods to keep us alive. And we have abused truckers and blue-collar workers in this country for years and years and years. My dad drove a chemical tank line from Pittsburgh to Koppers plant on the East Coast in New Jersey. He made 2 round trips a day. That's 288 miles each way. And he was worn out. I mean, worn out. And there, bad. If it hadn't been for the Pennsylvania Turnpike and some rest stops, I don't know how he survived. He did it for 18 months. He was a coal truck driver before that. And I learned to appreciate dramatically not having a father, because he was on the road all the time. I learned how important it was to be quiet, because he was trying to sleep and he couldn't sleep easily because he was wound up when he got home. And I see the Freedom Convoy. These guys are living in trucks. Well, Roy, you're doing it from a truck right now.
They're sitting right in the cab of a truck.
Truck drivers live in a box that's 8 by 8 by 12 most of their life, and the social interaction is minimal, and they are blamed for every damn thing that happens on a highway with really bad drivers. I mean, there's so many bad drivers on the highway, it's unbelievable. And they think an 83,000 pound truck can stop like a Volkswagen. It's just insane what goes on. And then We tell them, well, you got to get vaccinated because we got COVID. Well, they're inside of a damn box all day long, every day. They're not going to pollute anybody. And yet the congressmen and the senators all across the country and states and federal do whatever the hell want to. They tell you what to do. They manage you, but they go off to the French Laundry and have dinner, and they go to baseball games and they sit in the box and they go to parties and they don't follow their own damn rules. And so the truck driver has said, enough is enough. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people pulling me over and telling me I don't have the right brakes or the right this or that or whatever, getting tickets, and I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And now you got to get vaccinated. Well, you know what? If you don't want to get vaccinated, this is the United States of America. You shouldn't get vaccinated. Now, think about this for a minute. That's what they told African American men in the South pre-World War II, and they were injecting them with syphilis to find out what they could do to save them. It's no wonder African Americans don't want these shots and vaccination because the history's never been good. Now all of a sudden they're condemning it. Canada goes nuts, and Trudeau, I don't know if he's a communist or what, but I can't believe he started arresting people under martial law because they came to the Capitol to talk to him. All he had to do was walk outside and say, hey, guys, you want to talk? Let's talk. And sat down with 15 or 20 of them to listen to him. Just listen. You don't have to open up your mouth and say anything. Just listen. The same thing's going on with American truck drivers. We need to listen to these guys. They got tough lives. They see America in ways most of us never get to see America. So I want to give them all hero medals. I want them to go to D.C., circle the Capitol building and say, hey, we'd like to talk. And then just sit there.
Well, I'll be honest, when COVID started, we saw Trump get out and talk to truck drivers and invite them to the White House. I've never seen that in the time that I've been driving.
Well, I just sent a big chunk of money to the Freedom Convoy Fund so they can buy diesel fuel and food.
That's amazing.
That's what they're doing. The citizens of this country need to stand up and have their voice heard in a profound way. Don't have to get violent. You don't have to set fire to anything. You can't do what Black Lives Matter did and burn the house down. You can just stand there and look them in the eye and say, we need to talk, and don't budge until you talk.
Well, another way we can do it is just like you and I are tonight. Everybody that's watching this tonight, reach down in the left-hand corner of your screen and hit share. Share it out. Let everybody know that we get out here and talk. That's all that we do. Well, Heather, I have to tell you, I got my hero medal last week. I got a $305 overweight ticket in the state of Washington. So I got to tell you, that's the first one in 8 years, and it was my own damn dumb fault. And the cop looked like he was very surprised when I wasn't upset, wasn't due, whatever. It was like, dude, I did something dumb. You don't have to be upset or worried about giving me a ticket. I drove off and I should have stopped at the truck stop, waited. I would have known. I didn't do it. It's my own fault. What am I going to do? Get mad at you because I was a dumbass when I left home?
Well, that's a problem. You ate too much for lunch.
Yeah. Well, I wish the 3,700 pounds that I was overweight was just from lunch. So we'll leave it at that. So I learned a long time ago, that dude's just doing his job just like I am. Don't be a jerk to him. So it was my own fault. So we'll leave it at that and we'll move forward. But yeah, we have to deal with stuff like that. And, you're talking about leadership. I got in a rush to hurry up and leave and skipped a crucial step. And, hey, when you try to rush things, you do things wrong. So there you go. Brett Kuehl, thank you. If you're 3,700 pounds overweight, you better check your A1C. You're correct, sir. So you're 100% correct on that. Check, don't guess. I do check my A1C and I turned 50, got the clean bill of health with everything, did all the checks they recommend at 50. Like I said, this is what it is. But no, like I said, I just wanted to get on here and talk about some things tonight. I know Ed has a lot of things to talk about, so I'm going to let Ed lead the charge on the next one and bring up what he wants to talk about now.
Well, I think I have a mission in life these days. And my mission is, after 55 years of being in business, I want to help people not make the same mistakes I made and to learn to make new mistakes. I'm quoting General Powell. He told me one time at a lunch, he said, Ed, don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Learn to make new mistakes so you can grow and develop. And so I'm on a mission right now to teach the difference between management, leadership, and decision making. And I'm trying to talk to people about what's important and what's not important. This country of ours was founded on some very fundamental principles. Our Constitution, I've read the Federalist Papers, which were the documents that were written to all the colonies talking about how the federal government would work without becoming an imperial government because they were scared to death of England. And so these writings went back and forth, and the Constitution says that the governor of every state is the most powerful executive in our government. And the Second Amendment about owning firearms had nothing to do with hunting or safety or crime. It had to do with the fact that the British came in to New England towns and confiscated all the guns, the muskets,
Yep.
which denied the colonists the ability to hunt, to provide food for their families. And you think about that, they wanted guns to protect themselves from big government, the British Empire. And so the consequence of that, confiscating the guns, caused them to not to be able to feed their families. Now, we don't hunt to survive these days, but as part of our tradition, the founding of this country has some great moral lessons in it. If you read the Constitution, you read the Declaration of Independence, we are all created equal. Our government says we are all created equal by a supreme being. And that's got a very, very important theological implication. And this country of ours is becoming more and more suppressed every day by politicians who want to manage us and not lead us. Everybody wants to be led. Nobody wants to be managed. That's why our war fighters are probably some of the best war fighters in the world, because they teach the basic soldier, when in doubt, do what's right. Use your instincts, use your own abilities. You know, when you're in battle, the fog of war gets very, very difficult. And if you don't have a good moral center, if you haven't been trained, you will not succeed. And that's one of the reasons why people like Putin are such bullies, because they really, you think about this right now, they got a big problem because the conscripts in the Soviet army don't want to be there. And we need to think in terms of being honest with each other, speaking the truth to one another, and listening carefully. And people don't listen as well as they should. And they have their own point of view, and they think it's the only point of view. I'm sorry. They make chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla ice cream because we're all different. And we better start having a dialogue in this country about everybody is created equal. We all should have great opportunities for success. And the politicians pit one another. They pit us against each other. We got to stop that stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this truckers convoy, because they may rally the citizens to understand that we have a voice. The politicians take away our voice every day, and we got to stop that. We must have our voice. We must be heard.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you two really things that struck my mind when I was attending certain school online and learning about constitutional law and stuff. What you said, everybody needs to think about when our Constitution was signed, it had to go to every state. It was hand carried to every state, voted on in every state, and ratified in every state before it came law. Think about the journey that the Constitution took just to do that part of it. That to me is amazing when you look at what was involved in that time. It wasn't like getting in your car and driving down the street and somebody else signed a piece of paper. It wasn't that way. And if you ever have a chance to read George Washington's farewell address, That is a fine piece of literature by a leader. And I'm sorry, but that right there, he said that stuff that's going on today should never go on. You should never sign a long-term trade agreement. You should never sign long-term peace treaties, things like that with all these other countries. I had somebody pointed out to me this past week, if we took out today and started doing what Trump talked about with America First, great slogan, great concept, going back to a country where we build our own stuff, we build our own supply chain, we build our own supply network in the United States. We're in a position where we can't do that now. We've turned into a global economy where we start doing that, then we're going to be starting a war with China, this, that, and the other. And there's craziness abounds right now. We've roped ourselves into a situation that we don't want to be in, never should be in. And as a country, we never should be at. And I hope people are starting to see all that stuff. And the truckers going to Washington, D.C. That's what they're showing. So, but yeah, we've been on here just about an hour, Ed. How are you feeling about it? You ready to keep going?
Ask me any question, I'll give you an answer, because I know I have more useless stuff in my brain than anybody on the face of the earth.
All right. So, what do you think is going to happen when the truckers get to Washington, D.C.? Because I've been following it. National Security Council or National Security Agency is already monitoring this situation. What do you foresee when they go there and do this? I mean, the truckers have all came out and said, we're not going to block the access for your first responders, your police, your fire, your so on and so forth. They're doing this all in what appears to be the correct way. What are your thoughts as far as when they get to Washington, D.C.?
Well, I look at what they did in Canada, and a lot of that's going on in the United States right now. That convoy has just gotten through Indianapolis on its way to Pennsylvania, and they're moving along at the speed limit. They're going to get to Washington, D.C. sometime tomorrow. They may rally, get organized, and go into the city. They're not really interested in causing chaos. What they really want to do is to say, you got to start paying attention to what we're telling you. And this is a big statement that they're making. And, it's like everything else in the world. If you approach people with open hands and an open heart, and you're honest with each other, and you stand your ground and you have a conversation, then you're going to make progress. If Biden in that crowd, I want you to think about this. He gave the State of the Union address. They called on the states to send National Guardsmen to protect the Capitol because he was going to give a speech. Like, we're not going to waste nobody even watched him on television, for God's sake. Why would we go to Washington? And they put fences up around the Capitol, and it's all theater because of an election coming up. They want to keep their power, and I'm telling you, the American people are going to throw them out of office. This is going to be a tidal wave election, in my opinion. I hope that they just show up at the Capitol building and quietly get out of their trucks and stand around, talk to one another, and ask to be heard. And that in and of itself will be covered all over the media. And if the news media was really honest and treated this in an honest and fair way, we would make progress. It scares me to death that somebody's going to try to incite something just so they can get heavy-handed and prove a political point. I hope that never happens. And these kind of things always have the potential of getting out of hand.
Yep.
And so I hope they show up in downtown D.C. And I don't care if there's gridlock there. In fact, I wish most of the politicians couldn't get to the Capitol building ever again because they're terrible at what they do. But that's neither here nor there.
Brent Kuehl says
I think it's going to get covered in the news media. I don't think it'll be covered fairly. But the politicians are paying attention. They know they're in trouble. I got to tell you, think about this. 31 members of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives have announced their retirement because they know they can't win. And they don't want to be in the minority because if the Republicans take over, and I'm going to say this and everybody's going to shoot me when I say this, I hope Trump doesn't run. And I'll tell you the reason why. He'll polarize this country again, and we can't afford that. We need to get a thoughtful leader as president who's going to lead and not command, lead. And you can't fight with the news media, you're going to lose. And Trump likes to fight. He's a New Yorker. You punch him, he's going to punch back. Okay, you said to me, who should run, Ed? I wish Joe Manchin would run. I'd vote for him.
I want Kristi Noem out of South Dakota to run.
I'm with you 100%. She could get elected. She could easily get elected.
I agree. Brent Kill says, I have a question for Ed. How many hamburgers from McDonald's have you eaten?
Every one I can get my hands on. Well, here, I got my favorite meal. Quarter-pound hamburger, no cheese, extra fresh onions. That's lunch. For breakfast, I want a sausage McMuffin with egg, no cheese, and a little bit of mustard, and a large hot tea, and well-done hash brown. And I eat at McDonald's every day of my life since 1965.
So I am going to say something because I read Ed's bio, and I'm going to bring this up because I hope he has some connections. You brought my favorite sandwich to the menu, and they don't have it year-round, and you need to bring it year-round. That McRib sandwich needs to be on the menu every day.
You know, I was the CEO of Famous Dave's Barbecue. And let me tell you about barbecue. Everybody eats it once or twice a year, and women don't really like going into barbecue restaurants because their hair stinks and they get stuff under their fingernails. So it's hard to get them to come for lunch. The McRib sandwich sells like hell for 6 weeks. And then you can't sell it for another 5 or 7 months. Then they buy it for 6 more weeks. So it's best to use it as a promotional sandwich. And if you want to have a McRib on a regular basis, I'll send you the recipe and I'll teach you how to make it at home. It's easy. The barbecue sauce is Kansas City Masterpiece barbecue sauce. That's the barbecue sauce I use.
I use it all the time.
All right, let's get to something serious.
All right, so we're going to get into something serious here. I'm going to share my 2 cents worth on politics, where we're at right now. We saw the first time in this last election, we saw a truck driver with a $300 budget unseat a lifetime New Jersey politician. Greatest thing I've ever seen. Right now, we are in a place right now where we could see our very first third-party president right now. And what we've talked about with leadership and all these other things, here's my 2 cents worth. You have your far left people, you have your very far right people. They get all the news, they get all the headlines. You have your center people, which is where I fall. I believe in some Democratic views, I believe in some Republican views. Am I a whatever? No. Most people do not agree 100% with one party or the other. It is time we built a third party that concentrates on what's right, not, oh, you have to believe this or you don't fit in, or you have to believe this or you don't fit with us. Just what you're talking about, the divisiveness. We are at a place right now where a third party can make a difference because there's so much distrust of either party that if we got out there and vote and we put together and we find a legitimate third party candidate, I think that person could get elected very easily.
So that's an interesting idea, but keep in mind the politicians create the election laws.
Right.
And we're in a situation where, because of the 2020 census, all the districts are being redrawn right now, and they're gerrymandering like hell. So here's what I suggest. We need a centrist a centrist, Republican, or Democrat. You know, my whole family's been Democrat all their life. I've been registered as a Democrat forever. I vote for the person. I don't vote for the party, and that's what everybody
Exactly.
should do. So a centrist, somebody that's got balance, that understands the point of view on the right and the left, and understands the needs of minorities in this country. Trump did. I'm going to talk about that for just 1 second. Trump did something really important. We've got 6 universities in the United States that have been traditionally black. And they've never been able to access federal money for their colleges and universities because they had special rules for them. Trump came in and talked to the university president and said, "What do you need?" When he did that, he created a system where they could get access to federal money just like Harvard and Yale, just like Ohio State and Indiana. And the reality of it is we need a centrist that speaks for the people and not for government institutions. There's another problem we got in this country today that I'm not sure I know what to do about, and that is social media like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and all the rest of them. We got a handful of people like Zuckerberg and Bezos and others, Elon Musk, that control social media. And then you look at who owns the newspapers. Jeff Bezos of Amazon owns the New York Times, the Washington, D.C. paper, and he controls the media. And whoever has a printing press controls the message. And so we're in a situation right now where who do you believe? Do you believe the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, the LA Times? Do you believe USA Today? Do you believe CNN? Do you believe Fox? Do you believe Newsmax? You know, these reporters have a bias. They all want to get and curry favor with politicians so they can get the new big story. So
Yep.
I don't disagree with your concept. You're never going to get a third party to win this country. Look at Bernie
Yep.
Sanders. He's been a socialist, a third party for 50 years. He's gotten rich crying like a baby about we need more socialism. And he's gotten rich because of it. Think about that. That guy's been a lifetime politician, never had a job in his life. He's a multimillionaire. How'd that happen? On a salary of $200,000 a year.
Well, and here's where I'm going to follow this up with what I said. Number one, until we start electing people that represent us in Washington, D.C., you have to have somebody that can look you and I in the eye and say, when I go to Food Lion and buy a gallon of milk, this is how much it costs. Until you can have somebody that can honestly answer that question, they're not looking out for you and I's interests. I'm sorry, but they're not. And yes, Ed is on a different pay scale than I am, but Ed can still tell you what a gallon of milk costs at the grocery store, at Kroger's, or wherever he goes shopping at. I know that because I've talked with Ed. I know what Ed does in his spare time. Those are the people that care about what you and I think and what people are tuning into this show that think about. Because I can tell you right now, Pelosi couldn't tell you how much a gallon of milk cost. Biden couldn't tell you. I'm not denigrating Trump, but he couldn't tell you. There's nothing wrong with that. Till we have somebody like that elected, the middle class is going to get left behind and forgotten about. That's first and foremost. The other thought I have on it is you should not be a lawyer and a lawmaker. We should never have a lawyer elected to office. When they write a legislature or a law, they already know how to circumvent the law before the ink's dry. And that is the bottom line. And that's just my beliefs. Whether it's right or wrong, that's my beliefs.
You know something, Roy, that is a very important piece of wisdom. I spent a lot of time with those people in D.C. and different state capitals, and we got way too many lawyers. Okay, everybody needs a lawyer, and I've got some friends that are great lawyers, and they really do great work, and I don't want to denigrate that. But the fact of the matter is, Those laws are written in such a way that they exempt themselves from it. Like insider trading, if I
Yes.
traded Fatburger stock based on what I know is going to happen about acquisitions and things like that, I'd go to jail in 5 minutes. I'd be in jail. Those politicians sit on those committees in DC talking about this drug, this policy, that policy, and their husbands and wives go out and buy the stock in that company. You ought to look.
That's how Bernie Sanders becomes.
Everybody ought to do research on Nancy Pelosi and understand who her granddad was. She grew up in Baltimore. Her family were in charge of the Longshoremen's Union in Baltimore. They went to San Francisco, took over the longshoremen out there. Her husband's a multi-gazillionaire. He and she both are buying stock like crazy in companies that they're regulating. And they
Yep.
know what the answer is. And I'll tell you, the biggest single industry in the United States that manipulates this is the pharmaceutical industry. When you look at the price of drugs in the United States compared around the world, and Trump tried to do something about this, he put this favorite nation thing in place that said if you Bayer aspirin, Bayer Chemical Company out of Germany, if you sell a drug in Germany or Africa or Spain cheaper than you're selling it in the United States, we want Spain's price. And he did that with all the pharmaceutical companies, and they were scared to death. I buy a drug called Ozempic, which is a diabetic drug. Okay, it's really powerful. It cost me $400 out of my pocket to buy that drug because it's not covered by insurance. You know what the price of that drug is retail? $2,200. And my insurance company, okay, guess what? I found I could get it from GoodRx out of Canada for $20.
So,
how is it possible?
all right. So you got me fired up on another subject that I spent hours upon hours thinking while I'm driving down the road. You got me fired up on another one. Here we go. I'm getting started. COVID-19, COVID vaccinations. Oh my God, the world's coming to an end. Whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Here's my 2 cents worth. Trump ended the whole thing with insulin for diabetics, things like this. The drug companies did what they did. I think that this whole COVID pandemic, as they say, and I agree with it, was them saying, hey, Johnson and Johnson, Pfizer, all of you big drug companies, we are going to reimburse you by this big scam and doing all these vaccinations and doing all this stuff. We're going to give you the keys to the kingdom. In turn, you sell diabetic drugs for $35. I don't think I'm wrong. I've never seen a president, a political party stand up and tell the American public, if you don't do what we tell you to do, we are going to insult you, denigrate you, and throw you in the, sell you down the river. They stood up and told you, if you don't get vaccinated, we're going to outcast you from America. They stood right there on national TV and told us. I think that was all to recoup the losses of the diabetic drugs in America. That's my 2 cents worth. Don't know whether it's right.
Think about this. For your audience, my education is really chemistry and biology. I wanted to teach it in high school. So I know something about science. I'm just going to give you an example of something. The COVID-19 virus, which is incomplete RNA that needs to capture DNA from a host cell to grow. It's a respiratory virus. That virus is 0.275 thousandths of a micron in size. The very best surgical mask in the United States is 275,000 microns. That means if you sneeze into that mask, that virus is going to go through there like a jet propulsion system. Now think about this. Every mask that's sold in the United States up until Biden got elected had a sign. Every box had to be labeled. This mask does not prevent disease. Really? Why in the hell are we all wearing masks? I refused to do it, I got to tell you, because I knew it didn't work. Okay, now I'm going to go to page 2. If you look at the CDC statistics on deaths in the United States, the most current information is 3 years old because they don't have a data system that's able to deal with metadata. Now, think about that, the United States. So, the best information you can get out of the CDC is not documented, it is anecdotal. Now, just think about this. If you go into the CDC website and look at deaths in the United States, think about that. Tell Amy I said hi. If you go into the United States statistics, deaths from automobile accidents and drownings are all negligible. Why? Because they incentivize the hospitals that if you got COVID patients and you stopped all elective procedures, that you would get a bonus from the US government. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. I had a bleeding ulcer because I was taking an arthritis medicine. I ended up having to get 4 pints of blood because that endomycin dug a hole in my stomach and damn near killed me. This was July the 11th. I get checked out of the hospital on July the 12th around noon. Okay? When I got out of the hospital, I get the release papers. You know what they said I was admitted for?
For COVID.
Severe symptoms of COVID. So I called the administrator of the hospital, who happens to be a friend of mine. I said, "What the hell is this all about?" He said, "Ed, everybody that comes in here is coming in because they got COVID because we get so much money from the federal government. We're profitable for the first time in our history. When you incentivize bad behavior, you're going to get it."
Well, I'm going to tell everybody right now, when this all broke out, when the COVID hit, I was in Stockton, California. My truck was broke down. I spent a week in Stockton, California in the hotel as this was escalating. Got into a truck. They asked for volunteers to go haul freight. Fred Meyer's out here, Costco. I was a toilet paper driver for weeks upon end, going into every hot spot in America. Did not take the vaccine. Now, I'm going to tell on myself, so y'all can all laugh when we say that. I wore a mask because it's a fashion statement for me. I don't have to put my teeth in when I wear a mask, so we're just going to leave it at that. So, there's a reason why I wear a mask. It doesn't have anything to do with health. I did not get vaccinated, and I could have it tomorrow, so I'm going to knock on the wood table in my sleeper here. Through every hot spot, in Washington, where the huge world was ending, in LA, where the world was ending. We're here today. We're good. I'm just saying. I watched what the military went through with the anthrax vaccination and all that stuff, where my beliefs come through. It doesn't have to be what you believe. You don't have to tell me I'm stupid, crazy, whatever. It's a choice I made. It's a choice that I made based on what I knew. I just did what we were asked to do, wash my hands, stayed away from people. You ask me to stay away from people, it's a great day. I don't like to be in a crowd, so we're golden. So, Heather said, yes, I had all the toilet paper. Yeah, Heather, I had truckloads upon truckloads upon truckloads of Costco toilet paper. And we were always the first one in the docks when we showed up. We were greeted like heroes when we showed up. I have to admit that. So, but yes,
that's too funny.
So, yes, my wife laughs at me. She's like, "Are you putting your teeth in or are you wearing a mask?" I'm wearing a mask. Sorry about your bad luck. So, it is what it is. So, Amy says, "I tell you, you're stupid all the time when you wear your mask to the store." Yes, she does. She makes that abundantly clear. Heather, yes, it's your choice, and that's your right. Yes, if y'all listen to my wife once in a while, she picks on me relentlessly. So, but that's why we get along so well. Well, we're over an hour. I think we'll call it a night here today, and then I think we're going to start doing these about every 2 weeks. I think that's what Ed has in mind for doing these shows. So we're going to gather up. I'm going to work on trying to I figured out how to add video clips and things like this. I just have to figure out how to get them downloaded. We can show some clips, bring some things up and talk about it so we can make this a whole lot more professional. I am learning video editing. Just started a new racing streaming service and having to learn how to edit videos. So lots of stuff going on over here. And so, Ed, thank you so much for your time. I know it's late where you're at, but I also know you don't go to bed till about midnight. So just about perfect timing, right?
Yep. Let's hope that Lacey gets another checkered flag.
Yes. Lacey, I'd love to have you on my racing podcast sometime to talk about your history. I love talking about racing. That's the other thing I love to talk about. You're welcome, Donna. Donna says, thanks, Roy and Ed. You can talk with Lacey on here, but no politics with her. I would never bring up politics. We'll talk on the racing forum. That's why we're over here. Jerry Marquez, thank you, sir. Bye, Canoe. See you, Itchy. One of my Xbox friends, Heather Kuhl, this has been great. Lots of great information from Ed. Yes, cannot thank Ed enough for his wisdom and foresight with this. So thank you guys and have a good night.
Wait, Roy, let's make sure we talk about this with everybody. We need to create a forum so everybody can have a voice in this government of ours.
Yes. We're thinking way above mine, but I'm all in for whatever we can do. The more y'all share this, the more people will join in and we can all get together and talk about whatever. There is no censorship on this page or anything about that. You're welcome to say what you think. I may not agree with it, but I'm not going to argue with you. You have a right to say what you feel.
Roy, goodbye.
Bye, Ed. Have a good night.
Take care.